Good morning and welcome to another Global GEG event. I am excited to introduce our new friend, Fred Crawford from Prince George County up in Maryland, right? At Drew Freeman Middle
Yes,
School.
yes, ma'am.
And I hear we have some special guests watching today.
Yes, if anybody from the Drew Freeman community want to just give a quick shout out, this is your moment.
Well, welcome everybody. So Fred, what are you going to tell us about today?
So as you can see on my board, we're going to be talking about both the VLOOKUP and the if functions. And while I give this presentation, I'm going to take some time to differentiate in order to help people get a little bit more familiar with Google Sheets. And I wanted to also explain, give a special shout out to Dr. Alexander from her Google Sheets presentation. This is more so of an extension of what she did, more so focusing on functions. She did an amazing presentation, and I recommend that everybody watch it.
It's exciting. Well, welcome and let's hear about it.
All right, as you can see on the title, this presentation is entitled The VLOOKUP and the If Functions. By myself, Mr. Crawford, I have a master's degree in chemical engineering, as you can see right here. And also, I have other credentials that verify that I'm a lifelong learner, especially with technology. As you can see, here's a little bit more about me. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, but I was raised in South Florida. The reason why I say South Florida is because I was raised in both Miami and Fort Lauderdale. I went to Ohio State, got my bachelor's degree, and I went to New Mexico State and got my master's degree where I graduated summa cum laude. Now I teach at Prince George's County and I teach at Drew Freeman Middle School. I'm excited to learn more as I embark on my journey to become a mathematician. And I'm also a member of both the GAG Nova and GAG Maryland and also the NCTM. And you can find me on my YouTube. You can find me on my Twitter. And you can always email me if you have more questions. All right, so this is what we have on the docket. First part will be the premise and the purpose. The next part will be the cellular function. The next, after that, will be the arrays of vectors. Then we're going to move on to the VLOOKUP and match. Then we're going to talk about the if function. And we're going to conclude everything that we learned so far today. And also, if you do not have a copy of the bit.ly, this is the time to open it up just to make it a little bit more easier to keep up. So, Stephanie and Jenna, do they have the bit.ly out yet? Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and talk about the reason why you guys are watching me on the YouTube. All right. So, we got some facts. When we get data, sometimes it's just a little bit too much. And we don't need to read everything that we see on the spreadsheet. Sometimes we just want the bits and the pieces. And with that, Google Sheets is so amazing that it allows us to take what we want. So at the end of this training, what I want you guys to learn about is the difference between the VLOOKUP and the match functions, how to identify cells on a Google Sheet, and we're going to cross-reference this to the math curriculum, talking about an n by 1 array, which is a vertical line of numbers. And then we are going to manipulate a vector using the if function. And it's mostly going to be towards grading. All right, let's talk about a cell. Everybody knows about a cell when it comes to their biology class. Everybody knows about it, especially with the grade level that I teach, 7th grade. This is where you start talking about it the most. So in biology, cells are in any living thing. You're talking about plants and you're talking about animals, anything, you have a cell. And one of the things I like to do as a nerd is I like to reference anime. Back in my days, my anime was Pokemon. Just as you guys know, a Charmander evolves into a Charmeleon, who then evolves into a Charizard. And guess what? In biology, a group of cells make a tissue, which also makes an organ. So the cell is the Charmander, the tissue is the Charmeleon, and the organ is the Charizard. So in this training, we're going to talk about a different function of a cell. We're going to talk about cells as a rectangle, guys, as a rectangle on the Google spreadsheet. So let me shimmy on over to this gag demo document. As I click here, this is a rectangle. This is a rectangle. This is a rectangle. And this is a rectangle. You see a bunch of rectangles. I think we all get the point. All right. So a group of cells make an array, and a group of arrays make data. In math, we call this data a matrix. So this is an array. All of what I've highlighted is an array. I'm mostly going to talk about a vertical array. And then when we highlight more groups, then we have a matrix or a group of data. As you can see right now, array will be one column or one row, and a matrix is a group of rows and a group of columns. Okay, let's take some time and go a little bit beyond the theory. As you can see, right here, I've highlighted one cell. This cell is labeled A1 because A is the first letter of the alphabet, which is the first column here, and 1 is the first number on the that we learned, the first natural number that we learned back in kindergarten. So this cell is A1. As you see here, this cell that I'm on, once it gets over, that I'm on is called D11 because I'm on the fourth column and I'm on the 11th row. So we do have the row versus column debate. In math, we normally do everything row by column, but in spreadsheets, we do the exact opposite. Everything is column by row. So let's also keep that in mind in order to avoid confusion. So why is it opposite? This is more so my guess. The reason why I see it as opposite is because when you're in the kindergarten or even pre-K, you start learning your ABCs. You start learning your ABCs before you learn your one, two, threes. And like they say, reading is fundamental. So examples of cells. So if we have a cell that's A4, that means we got the first column, fourth row. X, which is the 24th letter of the alphabet, the 24th column in the 12th row. G, 200. G is the seventh column because it's the seventh letter and the 200th row. So just recognize these little things, and learning more about cells and how they work forced me to learn about what letter is in the alphabet or what order letter is in the alphabet. So I do have this as an activity for fun, and I would definitely like you guys to take your time and just try to identify this. If you want to, while this slide up, why won't people try to guess what letter and what row will we have for the first one? So I see a question. What is a cell? A cell on sheets is a rectangle where you can put specific data. That's it. Like for instance, in this cell, I put a 1. And in this cell below it, I put a 2. And we're going to come back and do more with that, okay? Now, with that being said, for number 1, what is the 14th letter of the alphabet? I'm going to tell you this. I believe the 13th letter is M, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, sometimes when you don't know, you got to, as I always encourage my students, let's Google it. Okay. The 14th letter of the alphabet. As you see, it's the N. So when we go onto our gag sheet, not gag, but when we go into our row, the 14th column is going to be N, and we're going to have the 15th row. So we're going to have N15 for the first one. And I know that F is the 6th letter, and H has to be the 8th letter. So this one will be H24. Yes. Now, with this one, notice I had to make the numbers easier. I had to make the numbers a bit easier because I knew if I was going to present, I was going to be off. Yes. All right. We're going to move on. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about arrays, and this is where I start turning into Yolando. I see that you're here. Make sure you do the quiz at the end. So now we're going to talk more about arrays of vectors, and we're going to dip a little bit into high school. All right, like I said, let's get ready to do some high school math. Arrays are a group of numbers represented in either a row or a column. Sometimes we call those vectors. So that's some math terminology for you. Then after that, I want you to see that whenever we have a column, we're going to have the dimensions n by 1. So if we have a row, what will be the dimensions? If n by 1 is the general dimensions for a column, what's the general dimensions for a row? Knowing that rows are opposite from a column. If n by 1 are the general dimensions for a column, what's the general dimensions for a row? And I will put this on the chat for you guys real quickly. Oh no, I have to actually type on it. I'm going to chat publicly as myself. 1 by n. So those are the dimensions. Notice that it's the opposite. It's going to be 1 by n. Those are the general dimensions. All right. But good guess with M. Understand that rows are opposite of columns in every way. Okay? Rows are opposite of the columns. So it's going to be 1 by n. So in this case, when we have the general dimensions n by 1, that means you can choose how many rows you want, but put them in one vertical column. So with the opposite 1 by n, you can choose how many columns you want, but it's going to be in one row. And 1 by n, all right? Even though 1 times n is n, we still got to say 1 by n when we're doing the row dimensions. And that's how that could get confusing because you already know 1 times n is n. But no, Dimensional math works a little bit differently. All right. Now, as you can see, originally I had a video, but I'm going to be the video. So notice right here, and I'm gonna give my YouTube time to catch up. Normally, if I want to create 24 rows and whatnot, and let me do this on a whiteboard chat. Got my trusty pen. So normally, if we want to count by odd numbers because we're going from one and we're spacing it out by two, we can normally put 1, 3, 5, 7, and we don't have time to do all that. We do not have time to do 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. We could do it in a much simpler fashion. All we need are the first two numbers. So you'll notice that I posted 1 and 3. And I'm going to zoom in to make it easier to see. I posted 1 and 3. So what I'm going to do is highlight the two. And then I'm going to click on a little blue square, and then it's going to turn into a cross. And then I'm going to scroll down until I get the row number 24 and let go. I'm a little laggy. And as once I let go at row number 24, I ended at 47. Just by counting by twos. I avoided scaring you guys with my handwriting, and I just let Google do the work. See? All right, and we're going to get there. All right, now we at the part where we talk about Vlookup. And we're going to talk about the match function because my students know I'm very tough when it comes about attendance. So let's talk about both functions. For the VLOOKUP, you can select desired portions of the data output. For me, I use this to verify attendance. Then, following that, what happens is the function tends to return values from other part of the chart. Yes. So the syntax that we use for VLOOKUP is the actual function, and this is assuming that the equal sign is already put. The item of comparison, data range, desired column, or row index, and verify sort. Hey, Sailor. Now, with the match function, it's pretty much the same as the VLOOKUP function. If you had to choose just by looking at the syntax, the match function doesn't have as much components as the VLOOKUP. So which one would you choose to help you filter out data? Would you choose VLOOKUP or match? So if you were to choose, would you choose the VLOOKUP or the match function? Between VLOOKUP or match? I like the way Kevin remixed it, VLOOK. Yes, all the way. VLOOK. Kevin, you gonna have everybody saying, "V, look, you just started a trend." All right, so I'm still gonna talk about both, but I just want to see what people are thinking. All right, so when I went ahead and did this presentation, I have to be very careful about student data. So the most I could do was make up names. That's all I was able to do. Just make up people names that just came to my head. So as you see, I had a roster. I had their email addresses. I recreated I recreated all of this on my own. So what I normally do when I look at attendance to see who was present, notice I have more names on my roster than I do who actually signed in. So what I do is I put in my syntax. I do equals B lookup because I can never do a function without an equal sign. Then what I do is go to my search key, which will be the column next to me with everybody's last name. Then what I'm going to do is press C2 to find the last names that I want. Then I'm going to colon to D all the way down to number 24. D24 because that's where I have the last person's name who signed in. Then I'm gonna click 2 because I want the first names to appear for those who are present. And then I'm going to move forward to say false because I don't want this function messing with my order. I don't want this function messing with my order. Don't touch my order. So since I do realize that there is a bit of a lag, I'm going to let you see what I did. Notice I put dollar signs. I was just about to talk about that. I put dollar signs because if I didn't, when I go to the next row, it'll turn from C2 C2 colon D from C2 colon D24 to C3 colon D25. And after a while, that's going to mess up your code. Exactly, Mr. Pertuse. That's going to mess up the code. That's going to defeat the purpose of me doing this. Notice I get a suggested autofill. So Miss Amaya didn't show up to class. Neither did Mr. Arnold. And then I believe that's a Miss Houston. Yes. So notice that Houston didn't show up. So I have the people who did not show up. So with the NA, I never tried. I tried to change it to something else, but if you can change it to something else, that's the purpose of this presentation. Please teach me your ways if you can change the NA to something else, because I'm willing to learn. So if I get the yes, you can definitely use the if error. And let's say if you have people with the same names, what I would normally do in that situation, I would include another initial. Yes, I would include another initial because there's always a differentiation when it comes to the student names. Oh, okay. I see what you mean, Mr. Pertuse. So the formula that I use is right here. So right here, we can try the if error, and let's try to if error. and I'm not familiar with the syntax. So if I use if error, what happened is I made it blank. And I'm assuming that with the if error, I could probably have it say absent. So let's try this as this presentation goes along. There you go. So I learned this on the fly. Thank you, Louise. And then too, I can take it a step further. And what I could do is I could create a filter. And while I create a filter, I can clear all, clear, and then I can select absent. And then it only shows me the students who are absent. Hey, that's what real differentiation is. Making sure that we're taking as we go live. So I can select all the people. So I only have 4 people absent. Oh Lord, Maitland is gonna make this even much fun. Watch out for Maitland. So we're gonna select all, and then I'm gonna go ahead and use the match function. So I'm going to use the F2, and with the match function, because I don't use this as much, I'm going to put my data range. This time, I can only use the match function for a column. So I'm going to do C2 all the way down to C24. And that's another important difference about the match function. And then I'm going to press 0 because I don't want the function messing with my data. I do not have a specific order, and I want to leave it alone. So what happened is I ended up having the same problem. So I needed to put my dollar signs. So when I went down here, it did the C3, C25. I don't want that. I want to keep it at C2 to C24. So I've gotten a little overzealous with my coding. Now, this time, when I did this says that Duran was the first person to sign in. The fourth one right here says that Norman was the second person to sign in, and so on. And then as Louise pointed out, I could have used the if error function to change it to absent. So it all depends on how I want to look up the data. All right. Any questions? So explore. Me personally, I don't know much about explore. And when I don't know something, I always search for help. Yeah, so I don't see nothing about explore, but I'm sure if the Google thing cannot help me, I can always Google search. Oh, now I get it. So explore is right here on the bottom left. Explore is right here on the bottom left. And this is something that I did teach my students when it came to Google Sheets. This is something that I taught my students when it came to Google Sheets. And what happened is I probably could use the explore key to find minimums, maximums, and just a further look into my data. So I never really tried that option, but it's something for me to look at more. All right. All right. Now, let's go ahead and move forward. I did decide to make a slide that will give more detail and explain more about each part of the VLOOKUP. Then I went forward to look at the item of comparison, the data range, and the verified sort. All right. So we're going to go back to the sheets again, and we're going to look at the grand if. So as I've talked about, the VLOOKUP and the match are examples of functions. Functions in math have an output that responds to an input. All right. So the output is the response to an input. Functions whose input give multiple outputs are not functions. Like for instance, let's say if I had a function diagram where I had a 2 that gives out a 3, a 4, and a 5. That's not a function. Okay? That's like having a spray bottle that sprays out the little water inside of the bottle, and it sprays out, let's just say, pencils, or it sprays out lotion. That's not a good thing. You don't want your spray bottle to do that. So always look at it like that. You don't want your spray bottle to spray out multiple things. That's not going to be a function. Unless if you change the setting for it to do it. But notice that it will have different siphons to do the spritz. Now, with that being said, Google Sheets have built-in functions, and we just went over 2 of them. All right. Now, right now, we're going to go on over to the if function. All right, the if function, syntax. Syntax in English, yes, we're going to the English class. I'm going to be a real teacher for a little bit. So in English, the syntax is the appropriate arrangement of words to make a complete sentence. On Google Sheets, the syntax of a function is the appropriate arrangement of components to make it work. So no, I want you to understand that words are the components and a complete sentence is, yes, the words are the components and a complete sentence is a function working. So that's the analogy. So if we put our words together correctly, we'll have a complete sentence. And we put the components correctly, we'll have a working function. Hey, all right. The syntax or the components of an if function are below. So the if function is the desired change, the results with true, and the results with false. So let's go ahead and talk about grading. So here, when it comes to grading, let's say we're going to make an assumption. Through our school district, we do have a clause that says if a student makes a 0 but has evidence of good faith effort, that we as the teachers are to change the grade to a 50. So what we're going to assume is that maybe this person did not understand, but did a lot of work to show that he or she was trying. What we're going to do is, before I put anything on the official grading server, I'm going to put the if function. With the if function, I'm going to say if anybody made a grade on this column that is less than a 50, what we're going to do is we're going to change the grade to a 50. Then, if not, then we're going to leave it alone. And that's what happened. After I did that, I was able to just leave it alone. Again, we let Google do the work. All right. So, as you saw through my grading demonstration, I assumed good faith effort, and anything that was less than a 50 became a 50. So, in conclusion, we talked about identifying a cell. We talked about an array or a vector. And then we talked about using different functions. So there will be questions, and I will continuously help. You can find me through my work email, or you can find me through my personal email that I mentioned in the biography. I'm always happy to get a good tweet about education. Now, for my students who are here, we will post the bit.ly for the quiz, and you can take the quiz. And I've also decided to make the quiz accessible for the public. And students, you have to take the quiz for extra credit. The amount you get correct, you know, the amount that you get correct will be the amount of extra credit you get. For instance, we have 5 questions. If you get 1 correct, that's 20 extra credit points. If you get all 5 correct, that's 100. So, Mrs. Howell, or yes, Mrs. Howell, if you'll be kind enough to post the link, I'll be happy. Well, that's it. I'm done sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing today. That I'm like, my mind is like blown. I have so many different things I need to try and do. I don't even know where to begin.
Yes. The students like, where's the extra credit link?
Where did you put that link at? Is there?
I can go ahead and get that real quickly.
Can you put it in the private chat and I will share it so your students can get that extra credit?
Yeah.
Lisa's saying extra credit is the best.
You know, like I have them waking up on a Saturday morning, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Like everybody is supposed to sleep in and pretend that they did homework on a Saturday.
All right. I think Jenna put it in the chat. Oh, wait, no. This is the extra credit link.
Oh, right. Yeah, there you go. It's just a live quiz 1, because I would definitely love to do more presentations with you all. So hopefully this is just the first one.
Yeah, that was awesome. We had a lot of fun today. And so did your students. It looks like they're talking about cookies. There's different stuff. You had so much love during this session. And so many different people saying thank you so much. And then I think Luis is asking if we can get extra credit.
Everybody can get extra credit. So I just posted the link in the private chat. It should say live quiz 1. It should be bit.ly /live quiz 1. There you go. Now it's there.
Yeah, and Danielle has a really good thing since we have some students on here. Abbott and myself, we did a session on organizing your life with Google. So I will put that link in the chat. Do you have students that are unorganized, Frederick?
Oh, I wouldn't call them unorganized. They haven't been taught. So, and I will say I'm guilty of not teaching them how to organize their drive. I talked about it a couple of times, but I never gave a full lesson.
Gotcha. I will throw that link in the chat. But you'd be surprised how many adults aren't organized either.
Yes.
All right. I don't think there's any more questions. Did you see any questions, Jenna?
It looks like a couple of them are having some trouble getting into the extra credit.
So let me make sure my link is open that everybody can view it. All right, I'm going to make sure of that because that's my favorite mistake to make. I know for the students, it should be easier because of the fact that I did set it up to be. There you go. That's why I only restricted it to Prince George's County. That's why.
So you have
Now it should be easier to access. Now they should access it.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we hopefully will have you back. And thank you everyone who attended today live. I'm sure we'll have Frederick back on some other topic because he's got so much to share with everybody. But everybody have a great day, and we'll see you back hopefully later.
Yes.